Okay.
Wow, that's very official sounding.
Yeah, right.
I guess I've never been on a recorded Zoom before.
Yeah, I guess. So, Father Jeff, thank you for joining with me tonight.
Sure, pleasure.
So we met, unfortunately, back in September when you were asked to participate in the vigil for my sister.
That's right.
Um,
Mm.
and which was very nice considering like my family's not Catholic, but you were nice enough to do that.
Well, in a situation like that, how much does that matter, right?
Yeah.
To me, it was like, all right, these are our neighbors. They're hurting. We need to be there for them. And
Yeah.
the fact that you did have a connection to our church through the youth group that we had, even though I wasn't here then.
Yeah.
And Melissa and Stephanie came and told me what was going on, and so I was honored to participate, and it was moving. It was very moving to be a part of that. You guys were just on my mind so much, and I would see you sometimes here lighting candles and stuff, and I tried to keep up to make sure there were always candles for you.
Yeah.
Because you were using all of them. But no, what a beautiful thing to do,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I'm glad we had that opportunity to connect, even though the circumstances were obviously terrible.
Yeah.
So, but I always think, God can make something good come out of something terrible, and when we can't see a way through it, He does. Um, and even this project that you're doing is such a beautiful thing. That's it's a way to bring something good that's going to help a lot of people out of a terrible tragedy, and so it's a work of God that you're doing. It's beautiful. So,
Thank you.
um,
So I'm going to just assume over the years you've facilitated, I guess, a lot of funerals.
oh, sure, yeah,
Um, so how?
probably a couple hundred. I've only been a priest for 12 years. I've probably done a couple hundred funerals.
That's a lot.
Yeah, here at Holy Trinity, we do about 15 a year, I think. So, yeah, I'm just guessing. It's been
Yeah.
at least 150 that I've done. Um, and it varies so much, because a lot of them are for people that I didn't know at all. But the last one I did here was for a parishioner I knew quite well. So in some way, it's harder than, because you're grieving along with the family. But sometimes it's easier too. It's hard to preach at a funeral for somebody you never met. So, like, what do you can't really say anything too specific about them except what the family tells you.
Right.
So, but yeah, I've done a lot of this, and it's funny whenever I tell my mom, if I'm talking to my mom, I say I have a funeral tomorrow. She's like, I don't know how you do it. I don't either. It's God's grace, um, to be able to handle this stuff, and not let it crush us. Um, yeah, sometimes it's hard, especially like I said, when it's somebody well. It's tough.
Yeah.
I had a parishioner who passed away on Christmas Eve. She took her own life, and her husband came home from the store and found her. And I had just found out that morning that I tested positive for COVID, so I had to isolate. I couldn't go be with him, and that was really hard. It's really, and I still can't understand that whole thing. Like, why did this happen? And so yeah, sometimes it's really, really hard. Fortunately, I guess you could say fortunately, I was out of isolation in time to do the funeral mass for her. Actually, the first thing I did after a week in isolation was to go to her wake. So I was glad to be able to do that, but such a terrible tragedy. Yeah, it's just that was probably the hardest one, like
Yeah.
harder than doing my own grandparents. I did 3 of my 4 grandparents' funerals,
Oh, wow.
but those were not the hardest ones that I've done. So, yeah.
So being someone who has gone through grief themselves, and someone who's like, you know, whose job is to like say, you know, everything happened. I don't want to sound like how it's coming out isn't how I'm meaning it. Please don't take offense. But like your job is to say like, everything happens for a reason. It's God's will. God has a reason. All that stuff.
Yeah,
Like
I don't know
how?
if I always buy that, or at least that,
Mhm.
or at least that it's helpful to say that. I mean,
Right.
look at the situation you guys are in. It would make no sense for me to try to tell you that happened to your sister for a reason. I can't try to explain that. I don't think it's what God wanted to happen. He allowed it to happen, and that's a sad mystery for us. But like I said, the only way I can make sense of that is to say that he allowed it because he knew that he could bring something good out of it, somehow. But when you're in that moment, especially when the grief is fresh, you can't take that in, I don't think. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't help to hear that. Um, I don't know. My experience of it is it's more about just being present. Um, I often do not know what to say, so I just show up and just try to be present and comforting, and allow the scriptures and the prayers of the church to do the talking. There's a lot of wisdom behind all of that, and yeah, but I think it's giving people permission to feel however they feel, and not to think that they're supposed to feel a certain way, or like because we're Christians that that grief shouldn't bother us because we know there's life after death. No, I mean, it's painful. It's painful to be separated from somebody we love in that way. And so we don't overlook that. We don't dismiss that. But what we look for is the signs of hope that carry us through it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No. So like, what do you say? For me personally,
yeah,
since everything happened, I've had my little, I've had my moments where I wasn't too happy with him.
sure.
You know, more often than not. More often than not. So if you had a parishioner come up to you and say, you know what, I don't believe in him, I don't think he's real, why would he allow this to happen? Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I've had people say, yeah, I'm angry with God because this happened. And I'd say, well, you're allowed to be angry with him. He can take it. I mean, that sounds kind of trite, but it's also true. I mean, God knows us better than we know ourselves. And I can't help but think that he understands why we feel the way we do, why it's so difficult for us to accept. It's difficult for us to accept death, whether it's our own or somebody else's, because we weren't meant to die. Like, our hearts are made for life, right? So we're meant to live, and it seems unfair. Even when somebody lives. I mean, I did a funeral not that long ago for somebody who was like almost 100, but you got the sense, even talking with the family members, like even 100 years isn't long enough. We never want to be separated from the people we love, and we can never exhaust, even in 100 years, our desire for life. So that's built into us, that we're made for eternity. And so, yeah, I mean, we should be angry about death. It's not supposed to be this way. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing. I don't blame anybody for feeling that way, though. I really, truly, I think it's so important that we not try to project onto people, or even unintentionally to try to like box in their emotions and say, well, this is what you're allowed to feel about this. No, you feel the way you feel. It's understandable. And I guess I would say I trust God enough that he's still going to be there on the other side of all of this. And I don't have to try to convince people, to believe or to have hope or to feel a certain way. I trust him to do his work in his time. So I don't know if that, I'm not sure if that really answers your question.
No, it did. It did.
Yeah.
Yesterday was my mom's birthday.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was it was a hard. My other sister's birthday was on Friday, so we had 2 birthdays, one weekend.
Yeah.
So it was a hard weekend.
It's hard to celebrate.
Yeah, so like there really wasn't much celebrating. It just kind of was like another day. But my dad we were sitting down having late breakfast, early lunch, and he goes, we need to start moving forward. Because Susie's in heaven, which we know she is. We pray that she's in there, up there. She wouldn't want to look down and see us crying all the time, being sad all the time, because she's not able to rest, seeing how sad we are. And, like I said, my cousin passed away 15 years next month. And he goes, we prayed all the time for Sean, that he went to heaven. And if we believe that he's in heaven, and we believe that, Susie's with him and they're together with like my grandparents and other people. But I'm thinking, like, that's if you believe. And sometimes I find it hard to believe. And that makes me feel bad.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and there's so many emotions, because I think you probably would feel, if you really tried to celebrate the birthdays, you'd probably feel kind of guilty celebrating, right? It's amazing what our emotions do. And you could try to say, well, Susie would want us to celebrate. She'd want us to be happy. It's a happy occasion. But it's hard to give yourself permission to celebrate. And you almost think like you shouldn't want to celebrate right now. And some of that is just, it's a function of time. With time, you'll gradually feel better. It never goes away, of course, it never goes away. You never forget. But time does help to heal some of that and get you to a point where you can give yourself permission to live again and feel joy and experience, celebrations as a happy thing. You're always going to know that, she should be there and she's not there. And that's hard, but you'll be able to celebrate again. And maybe you're just not there yet, and that's okay. It's only been a few months.
Yeah.
So, but I see your dad's point, and I think it's a good one. You do have to keep living, and in that is an opportunity to honor your sister in the things that you do. What you're doing with this project is part of that. It's a way to honor your love for her and the things that you remember, that you admire about her, that you want to carry forward in the world, so that in that way she is still present here through the things that you say and do in her honor and in her memory. So, but yeah, I mean, it takes time, and it's not, this by now, I think there's no rules about how long it should take. It takes as long as it has to take. So you have to, again, like, you have to give yourself permission for that. I guess there's a balance that's needed, because you don't want to just kind of stagnate in your life. Um, but you do have to honor how you feel about things too, and respect yourself enough, to allow yourself that. And there's something to be said too, just as everybody experiences grief differently, and it depends on the circumstances too. It's a lot different. Like I think about my grandma, my dad's mom. She had Alzheimer's. It was like watching a death in slow motion for more than 10 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, she started having symptoms of dementia when she was in her late 60s, and she died when she was 81. So it was and the last 3 years of her life, she didn't talk, she couldn't walk, she couldn't feed herself. So it was total care. And my dad and his brother and sister were adamant that she would be able to stay home and not have to go into a nursing home. So they darn near killed themselves taking care of her for 3 years. So in some ways, when she passed, it was a relief. And that surprised me, because I was 30 and I had just been ordained. I was a priest for like 4 months, 5 months when all this happened. So my grandma's funeral was one of the first funerals I did. But the emotion surprised me, because in my life I hadn't experienced a lot of grief, a lot of loss. I come from a small family on both sides. I had lost my one grandfather when I was 12, and that was kind of a surreal experience, because I didn't even get to see him in the hospital. So it was just like one day he was there and then he was gone. They didn't have a funeral for him. They had like a memorial service a month later. So there was no closure really there. And that's something that has always bothered my mom to this day. And this was 30 years ago. So I was learning how to grieve even as a priest, and being with my family with my dad's family. The relief surprised me, and that has stayed with me, and it's helped me, because I end up ministering to a lot of families who lose someone to dementia, and to be able to say, you know what, maybe in the mix, the swirl of emotions you're going through, maybe there's some relief in there, and maybe you feel guilty about that, but don't, because it's normal, right? It's okay. Like, yeah, we should feel some relief, and it's not selfish to feel that way. But that's a certain kind of experience of grief that's very different from the kind of sudden thing that you guys have gone through, and that so many people go through. Or like I was saying about my parishioner who took her own life on Christmas Eve. Her husband, I mean, I just can't imagine.
Yeah.
When he called me, he was so upset. He had to repeat himself 3 times because I couldn't understand what he was trying to tell me. And I think he called me before he even called 911. In a moment like that, it's a totally different kind of experience, because it's violent in that way. So for me, like ministering to people, you have to take all of this into account. And like I said, sometimes there's just nothing you can even say. It's just being there, just being a supportive presence and listening is all we can do. But it's probably the most important thing we could do.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like whatever you're gonna say is not gonna make me feel better.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it's probably more likely to make you feel worse.
Yeah.
The harder you try, it's like the worse it gets.
Yeah. So just being there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to say anything, but just being there is the most comforting.
Yeah. Just expressing support and love, I think, is the most important thing. Yeah.
Like, I fear sometimes like my like it means I'm believing because I am like so angry.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, it just makes me feel really bad inside.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I can understand that. Because we're taught a certain way, right? Um, and it's a good thing that we're taught that our faith is supposed to carry us through times of difficulty and be a source of hope, um, and then believing that death is not the end, and that should help us. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like, again, like it's almost like a need to give permission, right? It's okay to feel however you feel. Nobody can tell you how you feel.
Yeah.
That's your personal experience, and that's okay. And if it leads you to question your faith for a while, that's understandable. I mean, certainly my hope and my prayer would be that eventually you're able to re-embrace it, maybe even in a deeper way than you could before, for the experience that you've gone through. But I can't make that happen for you. That's like I said before, that's God's work. I have to trust him to do it. But I can, yeah, I understand why there could be some guilt associated with that. But no, I mean, there's examples in scripture, right? Some characters in the Old Testament who go through these moments where they're like, they want to curse God, they want to, Job, and God didn't wipe them out. Okay, I get it. This is where you're at now, and I can understand why.
Yeah.
So,
There's still so many horrible people like walking this earth.
mm-hmm.
Like, why did they get to stay?
Mm-hmm.
And like my sister, and it's just so mind-boggling, and it really makes me so angry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a mystery that we'll probably never understand. I think sometimes that there are so many questions that we want to ask God when we get the opportunity. But when we actually get to that moment where we see God face to face, we won't care anymore about the questions. It won't matter anymore. But for now, it matters to us. We want to understand because it seems unfair.
Yeah.
It is unfair. It is unfair. And I think of the line from scripture that, God makes the rain fall on the bad and the good, right? And the sun shines, and but it's easy to say that. Oh, it's like it's for God to sort out later. Yeah, that's fine in the abstract, but when we're the one experiencing the pain, that's not very satisfying as an answer.
No.
So,
like, I don't know if you know that 3 days before Susie passed, one of my best friends passed away.
I remember that. You had just come back from
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The day before.
Yeah, right, and right before the storm hit.
Like, we were in the storm. My mom and I were stuck in the storm. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's right. I remember you saying that.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't know how many things like one person can go through before they're like, all right, like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Appreciate you thinking I'm all this strong, but a little bit of slack.
Yeah. Well, and we are. We do find out that we're stronger than we thought we were, and more resilient than we thought we were. But everybody has a limit. Everybody has a breaking point. And I don't don't say any of this to make any kind of comparison. There's no comparing situations. Everybody's experience is their own. But in my community, which I'm the superior of, we've endured a series of crises over the last few months that a number of times I've been on the point of saying, like, Lord, what are you doing to us? Like,
Yeah.
what did we do to deserve all of this? It's like another thing, I mean, it started with, for us, we had flood damage at a couple of the churches and from the hurricane, and dealing with some of that. And then one of the churches, the ceiling started caving in. We had to raise like $175,000 to get the ceiling fixed.
Wow.
And it's getting done, and we're probably going to be back in that church for Easter, which is great. And then one of the priests in my community has had some serious health issues. Like he just had surgery a couple of weeks ago. He's been in the emergency room like 4 times since Christmas. We all had COVID at the same, like 5 out of the 6 of us got COVID at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Right before Christmas. And we had to get other priests to come in and cover for us for Christmas and that weekend. It was insane. So it was just like this cascade of things, one after another. And I've had moments where I'm just like, I just want to like run away.
That kind of makes, not to like downplay your feelings, but it kind of makes me feel good that you're like questioning him too.
Yeah, and
not questioning him, but you're questioning him, not questioning like the idea of him, but like questioning him, like, why are you making me go through all this stuff?
Yeah, right. I mean,
that makes me feel a little bit more like,
yeah,
but less guilty.
That's why I said it. I think it's a normal human reaction to these things happening. And I guess one of the things that we try to get away from, and this is, getting a little more theological, I guess. When you read the Old Testament, a lot of what you see is there was a Jewish understanding. I guess it still is the Jewish understanding, although I'll let you ask the rabbi about that. That if bad things happen to you, and we see this in the gospel. So I'll make this a concrete example, because that's actually the passage that we're going to read at Mass this coming Sunday is the healing of the man born blind. It's from John's Gospel. And if I can remember which chapter, sadly I don't. And they're questioning, right? So the leaders of the Jewish community are questioning, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind, right? There's this sense of like that if something bad happens to you, it's like a curse that's come upon you because of sin, whether it was your own or your ancestors. And of course, Jesus's response there was, well, no, that's not the point. Like, that's not how this works. But I think it's sort of a normal human reaction to say, what did I do to deserve this? And it doesn't mean that you did anything to deserve it. Sometimes there's no explanation. And I've had, plenty of times where when I've preached at funerals, tragic situations where I've gotten up and said, I'm not going to try to explain this to you because I can't. It doesn't make any sense to me either. This should not have happened. We have to acknowledge that and say, okay, it's okay to feel that way.
I think it's good that you do that. My cousin's husband, he would say the same thing. He goes, I'm not going to say why this happened. I don't know why this happened. This shouldn't have happened. I'm not going to be like, there's a reason why this happened.
Right.
He goes, because
in the dark about it as anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that made it like, I don't know what the right word. Like, you're not trying to like downplay what happened. Be like, oh, there's a reason why this happened.
Oh, no.
You know what I
No,
mean?
I mean, no, I can't. I said this when I was meeting with Melissa earlier. I said I still can't wrap my head around what happened to you guys. I can't. Um, the thought of it is terrifying. Um, so I can't even begin to imagine what it's like for you, to think about what happened. Um, it should not have happened. There's no two ways about that. Um, and there's no beginning to try to explain why it happened. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, you could say, well, she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but why? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, we have our niece. She turned 3 in October. So
Yeah, I
um,
remember her. She's a cutie.
yeah, she's fun.
Yeah.
But she's experienced things that were like, is this real? We've heard her like talking to Susie. We've heard her, I don't know if you pass her house, you've seen the tree that's in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
That was planted the day after the burial.
Mm-hmm.
And we call it the Susie tree. We have things around it that people have sent us, or we put, we have a lot of wind chimes on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget, maybe back like November,
Mm-hmm.
December, around that time when it was like decent outside, I said, Ava, you want to go see the tree with me? So she came with me, and there was one small wind chime, then bigger wind chime.
Okay.
So she goes to the bigger wind chime. I'm holding her, and she holds onto the little piece, and she goes, I wish, and then she starts whispering.
Mm-hmm.
Shh. I said, Ava, what are you doing? She goes, shh, I'm talking to Susie.
Uh-huh.
She goes, shh, I'm talking. I was like, okay. Then she goes, shh. I said, Ava, you're done? She goes, no, not yet. All right, another like 10, 15 seconds goes by. She goes, okay, I'm done. I said, okay. Give it a kiss. And I said, Ava, who are you talking to? And she goes, hold on. And then she says like a few more things. I said, who were you talking to? She goes, I was talking to Susie.
Uh-huh.
And then she like remembers it. She went inside. I told my parents what happened, but she wasn't around when I told them. And then later on, she goes, yeah. She called my dad, yeah. She goes, yeah, I was talking to Susie. You know, she said she's seen her. So like, what are your thoughts on that? Like the angels, the spirits, I don't know.
I mean, I've heard enough stories of that type to think that there has to be something to it. So I'm certainly open to the possibility of this stuff being, these experiences being real, like that it's more than just somebody's active imagination, I can't say that I have any firsthand experience of any of that. And I tend to be somebody who's probably like more skeptical of that kind of stuff in general, but like I said, I've seen enough of these and heard enough stories like this to think there's got to be something to it. Some way in which there's some communication across the divide, so yeah, I kind of have to believe that. I mean, some people talk about having dreams, where they're with the person that had died, and they're telling them they're okay, or things like that,
Yeah.
So I think there's got to be something to it. I think it's more than just imagination.
Yeah, we've had a lot of signs come to us as a family.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Long Island about 2 weeks ago. My mom's whole family's from there. We're visiting my grandmother. And on the way home, my mom, was thinking about Susie. There was a pretty sunset going on. And my mom looks up, and the sun is now into the shape of letter S. I'll have to send you a picture. You can see it, and it's the letter S. Like, you can't really explain that.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah, those kinds of things are amazing because you think, well, if you had asked other people, they would have said, "Oh, we didn't see that," you
yeah,
know. So it's just for you, but
I didn't see it. I was driving, but she took a picture of it, and I was like,
yeah, right.
you
And
can't deny it.
who's to say it's not real? You know,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, amazing. And you can take those things as reassurances, because they're positive experiences, right?
yeah,
So that's giving you a sense that your sister is at peace, that she's okay, and that maybe she's trying to let you know that she's okay. Um, and so, yeah, if it brings you some solace, and yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing anyway.
yeah,
I wouldn't go like looking for those things, but if they come to you, they come to you.
yeah. How has how has your experience been with grieving, like with speaking with grieving parents or grieving siblings or grieving like kids?
Mm.
Like, have you seen differences in how like you preach or how you like the things that you say depending on like the different circumstances?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, that's a really good question. Because it's probably not something that I've thought consciously about a lot. It's just one of those things that you kind of adjust. Maybe I don't want to say automatically, but I think I just adjust to this situation, whatever the situation is. Like I said before, it's very different if you know the people well versus not really knowing them at all. And then what's the dynamic in the family, and what are the connections, and you try to get a read on how people are doing and how they're experiencing the situation. Um, but yeah, and preaching, because of the nature of it, preaching is maybe a little more general, but then when you're having the one-on-one conversations or just the smaller conversations that are less public, then it's easier to kind of tailor to the situation. Preaching is if you have 50 or 100 people in front of you and of all different ages and different levels of connection to the person, then yeah, it's different because you have to be kind of more general about it. So I'm definitely aware, like, okay, yeah, I have to, if I'm speaking to children, I have to approach it differently, depending on their level of understanding um, and so on, and maybe even their ability to express their emotions or not. So, but this is really interesting to me because you're making me think about things that I haven't really consciously thought about much. It's just kind of maybe it's a lot of it's instinct, some of it's training. It's just you just go with the flow of whatever's happening, and try not to put your foot in your mouth, which is not always an easy
Yeah,
thing to do. So I know there have been times where I've said dumb things that probably didn't help or maybe made things worse. Which is why I think sometimes it's better to just keep your mouth shut and just be there.
yeah. Well, funny you say that because in our religion we do a 40-day memorial service after the person passed. We do a 6 months memorial and 1 year. So we just had the 6 months a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so my cousin's husband was talking to my parents. He goes, it's time for you guys to move on. But then, so the headstone was put in the day before the 6 months. So, we went to the cemetery on the 6 months. The stone was there, And my dad had asked him to come meet us because apparently, you're supposed to bless the headstone once it's put in.
Okay.
They say their prayers. He blesses, puts the holy water on the tombstone and holy water on the cross if it's there.
Yeah.
And he said, I want to apologize for what I said. I didn't mean moving on, like you need to forget. I meant to say like moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just interesting how like I don't think I've ever, and I've been to one or two like Catholic funerals. So I don't think they're as, like for us, I feel like it's always, you can never stop mourning the person because it's constantly being brought up all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it just can become like very draining.
Yeah, of course.
Like you already have the funeral and then, a month later you have the 40-day where it's just like bringing it up all over again. Then you have the 6-month memorial and bringing it up all over again. And you have the year memorial and bringing it up all over again.
Yeah. There are similar traditions in the Catholic tradition of, they call it the month's mind mass. So it'd be a month after. And then on the anniversary is certainly appropriate. But it's something that I see is rarely done anymore. And one of the things, and I used to think about this in my previous assignment in New Brunswick, when we worked with the Rutgers students, and it was, so we had a young congregation there. And, we have the tradition of that you can have a mass intention offered for someone. It doesn't have to be someone who's died. It could be for anyone or any, or for any need. If it's something that's consistent with our faith, then a mass could be offered for that intention. Like we could offer a mass for peace in Ukraine, or even for good weather or anything like that. But usually it's done in memory of loved ones who have died. And I find this here too. Now I have an older congregation here. They're much more attentive to this, and they're often requesting the mass intentions near the anniversaries. But when I was in New Brunswick working with the younger congregation, and part of it's probably because a lot of them hadn't experienced the same level of loss in their short lives, that wasn't a tradition that they were perhaps even aware of, let alone really participating in. So we would have to remind them, hey, you could have a mass said for your grandma or whatever. But I think it's a beautiful tradition. And the funny thing, like, I don't do that. I don't do it enough. Like, I realize, I thought about this the last time I visited my grandparents' grave. My dad's parents are buried in this big veterans cemetery in South Jersey, because my grandpa was in World War II. And so I try to go, it's kind of far, but I try to go a few times a year at least. And last time I went, my dad and I went together and we cleaned the headstone, and it was beautiful. And then, but I was thinking like, wow, I don't offer mass for my grandparents enough. I'm always thinking about everybody else.
Yeah.
And I forget about myself and my own family sometimes. But yeah, I can see how, though, some of those traditions can, while they're meant to help us to process our grief and move forward, sometimes it makes it harder. At least in the short term. So yeah, I can understand that.
When everything happened, actually, we got a lot of those like mass intention cards sent to us.
Oh yeah.
A lot of them. We're like, what is? I didn't know. Obviously, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But it said, the mass on Sunday, whatever, September 30th will be in honor or memory of.
Yeah, I'm sure we had some here, and yeah, I'm sure we did.
Yeah, but what was that? I remember my family was invited to something at the church.
Oh.
Where you brought up the picture? What was that for?
Yes. So in the Catholic tradition, November in particular
Yeah.
is the month that we pray for the dead, and the month starts with the Feast of All Saints, and then the following day is the commemoration of All Souls. So at the same time that we're honoring those that we're sure are in heaven, well, then we also turn to praying for those who, like, it's kind of hard to say in a way that makes sense. We believe they're on their way to heaven, but they might not be there yet. It's the idea of purgatory in our tradition. I'm not sure if you have something similar or if that's just a Catholic thing.
I'll have to ask when I chat with him.
So the idea being that while we could be in a state of right relationship with God when we die, that we might be in need of further purification or detachment from earthly things in order to be prepared to experience the joy of heaven. And so purgatory is seen as an experience that is in one way painful, because it's like a burning away of our attachments to earth, but at the same time hopeful, because we know that we're on our way to heaven. And that so that our deepest hope and longing will be fulfilled in being able to experience that perfect communion with God and the saints. So we believe that that we can help the souls in purgatory through our prayers. And so that's the basis for why we pray for the dead, that we think that our prayers can actually help them, although it also helps us to pray for our loved ones who have died. So we have this tradition. I'm not sure how far back it goes in our parish. I think Anne Marie Izzo, who was the music director here for many years.
Yeah, I knew her.
Started it, yeah. And she passed away during. This was terrible. She died suddenly during the COVID lockdown in the spring of 2020, and we weren't even able to have a funeral for her, which to me seemed like such a crime, that this woman who gave her whole adult life to serve the church and played at so many funerals to help comfort grieving families, and we couldn't even have a funeral for her at the time. But anyway, she had started with Father Pringle this tradition of the Mass of Remembrance. And so we always have it on the Saturday that's the first Saturday of November. So it's close to that commemoration of All Souls. And so it's an opportunity to remember and to pray for the members of our community who had passed in the previous year. And it's quite moving. I really, it sounds strange to say that I look forward to it every year, but I do, because it's beautiful. And to be able to see all the families that come back, and I was really touched by it, especially this year. As we read the names and the families come up and light the candles, it just, it's beautiful, but it's also difficult at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was really, and somebody had asked me if should we invite the Hannahs to. I was like, of course, and I was so glad that to have that participation, that you guys were able to take part, because we're family, and what unites us is much stronger than the divisions between the different churches and all this stuff. 99% of what we believe is the same. So
yeah.
And you know what? And it wouldn't matter. I mean, if you were Jewish or Muslim or atheist or whatever, we would still invite you. You're our neighbors. We're part of this community, and so it's an opportunity to remember what binds us is stronger than what divides us.
Yeah, actually, so I think it was the week after or the weekend. I don't know, like all the days put it in together. But there's a Coptic Orthodox priest that lives a few streets down.
Really?
And he saw, what happened in the paper, and he saw the last name. He goes, "Oh, I have, people come to my church with that last name. They have to be like Middle Eastern descent or something." So he came to our house,
No.
and he's like, "I assume you guys were, Orthodox or so of some sort."
Yeah.
So we have a very religious neighborhood because he lives like no joke, like 3 streets down. The church is down the street, but it was like beautiful how all the different religions like supported us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting. I met a few years ago when I was still in New Brunswick. There's a Maronite church in Somerset, right near the New Brunswick line. The Maronites are Lebanese Catholics. And it's interesting about the Lebanese that there's never been a Lebanese Orthodox church. There was never a split. The Christian community in Lebanon remained Catholic throughout their history. So the Maronite church is one. And there aren't a ton of them in the United States, but there happens to be this Maronite church, St. Charbel's in Somerset. And they had a deacon was being ordained, and I had been in some classes. He studied at the seminary that I went to, and we had some classes together, so we'd gotten to know each other, and he invited me to the ordination. So at the reception, they seated the various clergy who had come together, and I ended up sitting next to a Coptic Orthodox priest whose last name is Hannah.
Oh, it's so funny.
Mark Hanna. I don't know. I think his community was in East Brunswick, but I'm not sure if there's still.
I think I think there's a one in East Brunswick. I know there's one in Hillsborough.
Yeah, and we had a very interesting conversation, and it was eye-opening for me because I don't think I'd ever met a Coptic Orthodox person before that. So there I was, the Roman Catholic sitting between the Coptic Orthodox and the Maronite bishop who came down from Brooklyn, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful to be able to build those connections, those bridges that, because too often we let ourselves just be confined to our little communities, and then it allows the divisions to become deeper, and they're not that deep, and they're not meant to be that deep.
It'll be really cool after I speak with Father Charles. Maybe like the three of us can have a Zoom, and we can like talk about the differences and the similarities.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, I'd learn a lot from that.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Right now it's busy because it's Lent. It's Lent, so he does services a lot.
Yeah. Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
And we've been stretched. So the community I belong to, that I'm superior of, we live over at St. Anne's on Anderson Street in Raritan.
Yeah.
There's 6 of us, 5 priests and a seminarian, and one of our priests, who's actually our founding superior of our community, has been having a lot of health issues lately, and he just had surgery. So we've been shorthanded, and we support each other, and we help each other out. We even rotate through the mass schedules in the different churches. So I'm not always here at Holy Trinity every weekend, or I'll be here for like part of the weekend, but then I'll be in the other places. So with having one priest down, we've all had to take up the slack. And I've done 10 masses since Friday. So
like in 3 days.
I had
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 4 days. That's a lot of talking.
I had 3 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, 3 yesterday, and 2 today. So
there's church on Monday because of Easter.
Exhausting. No, in the Catholic Church has mass every day of the year, except for Good Friday. And we have a service on Good Friday, but it's not a mass. it's got a bit of a different format. But yeah, we have mass every day of the year, and
If I want to go to church on a Tuesday, you'd be there?
Yeah, and at Holy Trinity we have a mass at 7 p.m. on every Tuesday.
I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah. So there are small, I would say a small subset of folks who make it a point to go every day, or maybe some will go like a couple times a week, depending on their work schedules and other things that are going on. But most don't, most just come on Sunday, and certainly there's no requirement to go on weekdays. But yeah, but then like I had Friday, I go once a month and I celebrate Mass at Bridgeway Nursing Home on Route 28. I go on the third Friday of the month. So that happened to be last Friday. So yeah, and we have at St. Anne's, we have a school, and we have Mass for them twice a week in the morning. So
My friend Amy went to St. Anne's.
okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's small. We're kind of struggling. We're trying to revitalize the school and keep it going. It's hard when enrollment is low.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to cover the costs. So, but it's beautiful. The kids are wonderful, and we have great teachers too. So I'm hopeful about it. But I had Mass for them on Friday morning. So it just happened that all these things happened around the same time, and I ended up doing a bunch in a row. So yeah, so it's a busy time of year, and we're already gearing up, getting ready for the Easter celebrations, planning everything out. And
when is Easter?
April 17th. Yes,
Okay.
but I think isn't it later for the Orthodox Church?
Yeah, it's sometimes together, but sometimes it's a week after. Sometimes it could be. I think last year or a few years ago, it was like a few weeks after the Catholic Easter.
Oh. Yeah, I think at some point, and I could be wrong on this, so I probably shouldn't say it on a recorded interview, but that at some point, perhaps the Orthodox fixed the date more. So the way we figure out the date for Easter is after the equinox, which we just had yesterday, right? I think was the spring equinox, yesterday or today. Then you go to the next full moon, and it's the Sunday after that full moon is Easter. Because the Jewish calendar is all based on the moon, the cycles of the moon. So it's sort of connecting it to the Passover, except oddly enough, then Passover is not always the same time as Easter either. So I don't know what happened there, but in terms of figuring out our calendars. So it's really on the late side this year, because we just had a full moon right before the equinox. So now we have to wait almost another whole month.
Oh, okay.
So
interesting. Yeah, I think ours is the week after.
Yeah. Well, I know Christmas is later.
Right? We celebrate like Christmas on Christmas.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. But I think it's December 7th. January 7th.
Yes, right.
Yeah, but we celebrate Christmas on like Christmas.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's tough. There's, because there's so much cultural pressure.
Yeah, I'm very.
Yeah. So, but to dare to be different is not always easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we celebrate the Epiphany on January 6th, which is the visit of the three kings. So, but that's almost towards the end of our season of Christmas, usually.
So interesting how like it could be so similar but so different.
Yeah. Right, and we were all one. If you go back far enough, these divisions weren't there, but and a lot of it originated not in theological issues, although there were theological disputes. it had more to do with politics. If you go back even to the Roman Empire and how East and West kind of diverged as the empire collapsed, and then political things that happened later brought about these divisions that really didn't have, at least on their basis, they didn't have that much to do with belief. That ended up being woven into it. But and from our perspective as Catholics, like we believe that the Orthodox churches have valid sacraments, have valid priests and bishops, and all of that. So, and I know that the most recent popes have tried to build bridges and try to engage in dialogue to break down those barriers.
Yeah, like I know I'm not allowed to get communion at your church. Trust me, I'll tell you the story later, but I know I'm not allowed to get communion at your church. Even though, baptized, I was got every, whatever you guys get. I don't know.
And it's funny because, so my understanding of it, and I could be wrong, and I was going to say, one of the challenges is that the Orthodox churches are not all the same. Even in terms of like when they split off and why and how all that came about. And so there's different beliefs, and each Orthodox church has its own head. There's no Pope of the East to kind of bring cohesion to that, which is fine. That's just how the traditions develop. But what makes it challenging is then if you're engaging in dialogue, trying to restore union, it's like no one can speak for everybody. Like if you want to engage in dialogue with the Catholic Church, the Pope can speak for all of us, right? But that's not that way in the East. You have the Patriarch of Moscow, you have the Patriarch of Constantinople, and you have all these leaders of the different churches who have different degrees of influence and different spheres of authority. So that makes it interesting and challenging. But my understanding of it in general is that Orthodox Christians, that we would permit Orthodox Christians to receive communion in our churches, but your church would probably tell you that you're not allowed to receive communion from us.
This is a story for off camera.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I'll admit I might be wrong.
This is an off the camera story.
And there's always misunderstandings, and well-intentioned people get things wrong and create a mess and problems. So I'm sorry that happened. Whatever happened, I'm sorry that happened.
A long time ago. It's okay.
I actually, just last Friday, when I was at the nursing home for Mass, and I was going around giving communion to the residents, one stopped me and she said, "I'm Orthodox." I said, that's okay, you can still receive, and especially in a situation like that where the person doesn't have the opportunity to connect with their own church. So if the belief in the sacrament is the same, then I think in particular way, then it's permitted for them to receive our sacraments. So if I'm wrong about this, I hope the Pope doesn't see this video and communicate me or something. I think that's gonna happen.
That's funny.
Well, if the Pope sees your video, wow, I mean,
that'd be kind of cool.
You're gonna get a lot of views.
That would be kind of cool.
And he could advertise you to 1 billion people. So
that'd be super cool.
Yeah, you won't know what happened to hit you. But anyway.
But yeah. But thank you for imparting your wisdom.
Well, I don't know. I don't feel wise, but
I mean, you made me feel better. You made me feel like my feelings are valid and it's okay that I feel how I feel.
oh, absolutely, that's true. Yeah, if there's one thing, one point to get across, it's that. You know, don't let anybody dictate to you how you should feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm grateful for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure, and it's been very thought-provoking for me to reflect on some of these things, and so it's going to help me in my ministry too, and in my own processing of the grief that I experienced too. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the opportunity, and
I'm good. Thank you.
I'm glad that you're doing this. It's a really great thing that you're doing.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Yeah, we're all just trying our best, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's okay.
But
So that's great. I wish you all the best with it, and
thank
let me
you.
know if there's any other way I could help. So
Okay, awesome.
yeah,
That'd be, hopefully we can get that, the conversation with Father Charles on
yeah,
the schedule sometime
that would
soon.
be really cool.
Yeah. I'll have to talk
Probably
to him.
after Easter though.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to text him and ask him when when we could figure out our time for this.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah, just let me know. I'll be happy
I will.
to do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome.
Have a good night.
You too, Chrissy. God
Bye.
bless you.
You
Lucky
too.
guy. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye.